Walking with lions and petting cubs is no longer allowed because it puts off tourists. That's according to new Southern African Tourism Service guidelines for wildlife parks and reserves. Now, SATSA, as they're known, spent a year studying animal interaction in the tourism industry and its impact on the country's image. For reaction to that now, I'm joined via Skype by a Lion and Safari Park General Manager, Andre Lecoq in Hartbeespoort in the northwest. Andre, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the news of these new guidelines from the Southern African Tourism Services Association came through about a week ago or so. Have you had a chance to digest what those guidelines say, and what's your reaction been to them?
Yes, certainly. So we had the opportunity to go through them. Look, bottom line, SATSA's guide has declared all interactions as unacceptable. And, this will surely have an impact on our business. We've seen in 2016, when we stopped interaction, that in a 3-month period, we lost most of our customers. So 3 months after that, we were forced to reintroduce that activity. It's something we tried. And if we do stop interaction, we'll have to retrench a lot of staff. And simply put, our business can't afford to go without it.
Now, SATSA says that they didn't just thumbsuck these guidelines. They did a study, and it was various surveys that they did. They interacted with tourists. This is the feedback that they're actually getting from tourists. But you're saying the tourists that come to you obviously wouldn't have agreed with the other tourists that were surveyed by SATSA in the first place.
So I think it's important to know that there's different markets, and we've seen a massive demand from the local market, from the Indian and Chinese markets. But we're also aware that there are sensitivities, from certain other specialized markets.
In terms of the welfare of animals, however, would you agree that some of that kind of interaction with animals is just generally not good for the animals unless it's done under a controlled environment, which I'm sure you claim to provide?
Yes, exactly. So the bottom line here is the industry should be regulated. And the Lion and Safari Park, we are very proud of the way that we look after our animals. Animal welfare is extremely important to us. And, we don't allow any abuse.
Now, the last time, or the first time rather, that I read about your reserve in Hartbeespoort was, I think, August earlier this year. And there was a video that went viral of a young lion that climbed on the roof of a 4x4, I think you can call it. And at the time, the stories said that those people were on an unguided self-drive through your lion, cheetah, and wild dog enclosures. And at the time, you were quoted. Nobody was hurt, thankfully, but you were quoted saying that it is a young pride. They haven't been in that particular enclosure for too long, about 3 or 4 months, but unfortunately they needed to be moved because they weren't reacting to the enclosure in the best possible way. Would you admit then that something like that would happen? It's a little bit too close for comfort, and that indeed there is a need for better guidelines to police these kinds of businesses?
Yeah. So, self-drive is a similar activity that you do at the Kruger National Park. Of course, the enclosure is just a lot smaller. But again, the safety of the public is just as important. And we always make sure, that we monitor all our lions to make sure that, there's any sign in their behavior that it might be dangerous to any public. We remove them when we take action. In this case, we have a management enclosure where we remove the lions too. All the lions stay on our property until they die of natural causes. So it's just a matter of us switching some of the prides to make sure that we can provide a safe environment for the tourist.
Now, you're speaking earlier about how different tourism markets want different things. Some would point to the fact that there are different markets in the world that still want to buy rhino horns. Is it fair to say that just because a certain market from a certain part of the world wants to experience certain things, that it's not necessarily the right thing that they want?
Look, I think you can't really compare interaction with rhino horn to start off with. And if it's done properly, I think there is a time and a place for it. In our situation, it's something that we deal with on a daily basis. We're fighting this thing not only for our staff, but also for our lions. We sit with a couple of we're just over 100 lions in captivity. And if we can't sustain the business if the business had to close down. Hundreds of lions will have to be euthanized. So it's a very fine balance here between the welfare of the local people versus the animals.
I suppose some would say, why are they in captivity in the first place? Thank you so much. Lion and Safari Park General Manager Andre Lecoq from Hartebeespoort joining us there from the Northwest.